What's up, everybody? Today we are going to be talking about resupply strategy when you are backpacking and when you are through hiking, because a good resupply strategy can literally make or break your hike. I'm not kidding. If you have a bad time in town, that can have some really negative impacts on your hike. We want to resupply as efficiently and effectively as we possibly can. So in this video, I'm going to be going over how to effectively get to town. We're going to be going over, the essential things you need to do when you're in town, like get a good meal. That's super important. Going to be going over lodging. We're going to be going over resupplying, like literally buying the food and stuff that you need for the next section of the trail. We're going to be going over laundry and, of course, how to get back to the trail. I will say right off the bat here that the most important thing, the overall theme for this video when we're talking about these specific things in terms of resupply, is that a good resupply requires some planning and preparation before you even get into town. That is so important. You want everything to be as close together as possible. That's going to ensure that things go smoothly once you're in town. It's not always easy. It's a lot easier said than done. However, it's super important, and I'm going to go into detail on that in the video. The other important thing for your resupplies, which is actually not true at all, but the other important thing is that you need to subscribe to this channel, please, if you haven't done so already. 60% of my audience right now is not subscribed. That's not cool. I mean, we're cool, but please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Okay, instead of just sitting here and blabbing to the camera about resupply, I thought it would actually be fun and helpful to use Google Maps to do a virtual walkthrough of what a actual resupply would look like while you're backpacking. And the town that I've chosen for this is the town of Rutland, Vermont, which is a popular resupply town on the Appalachian Trail, as well as the Long Trail. It's a town that's relatively close to where I live, so I'm very familiar with it, and I've gone into it as a hiker to resupply on 2 different occasions, again, on the Appalachian Trail and when I hiked the Long Trail. So I figured this would be like a good way to walk through all this stuff that I already talked about. I will say that Rutland is pretty big for a trail town. That's another reason why I chose it, because it's a little bit of a challenge for some of these things. It actually has some advantages too, being big, but there's also some disadvantages. So we're going to go through that. Of course, I'm going to have to generalize a little bit here. Every trail town is different. There's going to be different amenities. There's going to be different challenges and good things with each trail town. So this is just one example, but it should give you a pretty good overarching idea of how things are going to go. Before I get into the details of resupplying, I do want to say a huge thank you to this video's sponsor, Drink Element. Everybody, I want you to open a browser and I want you to go to this URL right here, drinkelement.com/KyleHatesHiking. Drink Element makes amazing electrolyte drink mixes. It's perfect for hiking. It's perfect when you're sweating out there on the trail. You want to make sure you stay hydrated, right? You want to make sure you're replacing your electrolytes, your salt, all that stuff that you're sweating out, because if you don't, you're going to be fatigued, you're going to be tired, your muscles are going to cramp up. This has happened to me before. So you want to replace those electrolytes with Drink Element. So if you go to this URL one more time, drinklmnt.com/KyleHatesHiking, you're going to get a free sample pack of Drink Element's electrolyte mix. You're going to get 8 different flavors. All you got to do is pay the cost of shipping. It's like $5 if you're in the US. No matter what kinds of flavors you like, I guarantee you they're going to have it. We got raspberry here, citrus, that's my personal favorite. We got orange. Then they have these crazy, really unique flavors like chocolate salt, mango chili, lemon, habanero. I always mispronounce that, watermelon. And they even have an unflavored version if you just want, the electrolytes without the flavor and all that stuff. No matter what your taste is, they got a flavor for you. And one more time, if you go to this link, this is a free sample pack. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from other folks who have already used this link and gotten their sample pack. People love this company, and I love this company because they stand behind their products so much. They're going to give it to you for free just to prove how good it is. All right, let's talk about resupply. All right, so starting out with this hypothetical resupply situation here, let's say you are at the trailhead and you need to get into town. How does that work? So right now we're at the Route 4 trail crossing, and we need to get from there all the way into the town of Rutland, Vermont. How do we do that? Well, there's a few different ways. The most obvious and probably the most popular way is to hitchhike into town. Now, I'm not going to advise you to do or not to do this. You have to hitchhike at your own risk. Obviously, there's no perfectly safe way to do it, but the fact of the matter is, I'm just being truthful with you guys here, a lot of hikers, myself included, hitchhike pretty consistently when they're on a thru hike or on a backpacking trip. It just is what it is. But if you don't want to hitchhike, you can also use a shuttle service potentially. Now, this kind of goes back to being prepared ahead of time. You can't just show up to the trailhead and expect a shuttle to be there for you. You have to plan it out. So if you have a app that you're using to guide your thru hike, like Guthook or the Far Out app it's called now, or if you have a guidebook that has this information in it, like you might want to try to plan your shuttle ahead of time, give them some heads up so they can be waiting for you when you get to the trail, or so that you don't have to wait very long. Another option, which is not as common, but actually is something that works in the town of Rutland, is that you could use public transportation. You could use something like Uber or Lyft. And like I said, Rutland here, they actually have a bus service that goes from town and drops you off really close to the trailhead. I only know this because I used it on my Appalachian Trail thru hike when I was coming out of town. So once you actually get into town, there's a few different things that you need to do. And the order of these things isn't really definitive, but I will say that usually the first thing I want to do when I get into town is get a good meal. Because you've been hiking for days, you've been eating your crappy trail food, you want some good stuff. And it kind of does go back to the hitchhiking thing or getting into town too, because maybe you want to decide on the restaurant you're going to go to ahead of time, or at least have an idea of where you're going to get dropped off, right? So you can tell your driver, hey, I'm trying to get to this restaurant, can you drop me off there? So let's say, for instance, I get into town and I want to go to freaking, I don't know, China Kitchen. Let's go there. Well, actually, let's read the reviews. Oh, 4.1, that's pretty good, right? It's Rutland after all. Not the best town, no offense, Rutland. So let's say we go to China Kitchen. We get our meal, we're chilling. The next thing that I would probably want to knock off this list here or take care of is the lodging. And again, you want to plan this beforehand. You can just show up with no idea where you're going to stay. Like, people do this, and it's probably going to work out fine, but it's going to be a lot less of a headache, a lot less stressful if you have an idea of where you're going to stay ahead of time. So for instance, if you're going to stay at a hotel here, maybe you call the hotel the day before or like the morning of, like when you're going to go into town, so that way you already know that you have your room reserved and you already know exactly where you're going to go. Because if you don't have this planned out beforehand, you might show up in the middle of town. Say you show up at this China Kitchen here, and then it turns out the hotel you end up booking is all the way up here at the Travel Inn, which I think is where I stayed on my long trail thru hike. I would not recommend this place, by the way. It was freaking terrible when I stayed there, but just for the sake of this example, the Travel Inn's up here, but the Chinese restaurant, where'd it go? It's right there. So that's a good 1.3 miles apart. And is 1.3 miles that much in the grand scheme of things? Not really, but you've been hiking. You don't want to have to walk an extra 1.3 miles in town. You want everything to be as close together as possible. It's going to make things a lot more efficient. You want to limit the amount of walking that you have to do as much as possible. You want to save your body and you want to rest. You're in town. You're not hiking. You want to rest your body as much as possible and save the walking for when you're actually on trail. So that's why it's important to plan these things ahead of time, because if you knew that you were going to be staying up here at the Travel Inn, maybe you don't get dropped off at this restaurant all the way down here. Maybe you go to, look, there's a Chinese restaurant right there, Ginger China. Maybe you go there instead. It's even got 0.1 better stars on the reviews. So that's just an example of why it's important to have an idea of what you're going to do, where you're going to go when you're in town before you actually get there. Now, let's say that you stay somewhere else, because not only are hotels an option, hostels are an option as well. And Rutland has a very famous, even infamous, you could say, hostel called the Yellow Deli. Now, I stayed here on my Appalachian Trail thru hike, and I don't need to go into all the details about why this place is kind of infamous, but basically it's run by a religious group. Some would say a cult. That's not my words. That's just what people say, called the 12 Tribes. And when I stayed there, they were great to me. It was a little bit bizarre maybe, but it wasn't like threatening or sketchy or anything like that. Let's just say I'm staying there. Just purely in terms of location, this is a great option. Probably a better option than staying up here at the Travel Inn, simply because this hostel is in the center of town. And that's important because, like I said, proximity to the things that you need is really, really important. So we've got plenty of restaurants around here you can see, and the next thing that we're going to worry about here is the actual resupply itself, buying the groceries and food that you need for the next section of your trail. Once again, this is a important thing to keep in mind, because if you look here, there's, where is it, a Walmart and a Price Chopper very, very close to the Yellow Deli. I mean, look at that. If you measure the distance to Walmart, look at that, 695 feet. that's perfect. If you can find a grocery store or a place to resupply to buy your food for the next section of trail that's close to your lodging, oh guys, that is some good stuff. And ultimately, that's what you want to shoot for. You want to find a lodging location or a central location. Maybe if you're not going to stay overnight, you're going to want to get dropped off in a central location that has the easiest access to the things that you need. So anyways, let me talk about a few other things that you should keep in mind when you're selecting your lodging. So the location I covered already, that's probably the most important thing. But another thing you want to think about is laundry, because that's probably something you're going to want to do when you're in town. You want to clean your clothes. You're all disgusting. Come on, you gotta get yourself clean. So many places that you will stay, hostels, hotels, will offer laundry, sometimes for free, sometimes for a small fee. That's something that you want to, again, planning ahead, you want to know about this before you get into town so there's no surprises at all. Because if the place you're staying offers laundry, then that's one less place you have to go. You don't have to go to the laundromat anymore. That's perfect. If your hotel or your hostel isn't close to any of the other things that you need, like a grocery store, a restaurant, laundromat, stuff like that, make sure you know if they have a shuttle service or not, because a lot of the time, hostels specifically know that if they're not close to amenities, they need to have a shuttle service so that hikers can get to those amenities. So if your hostel is going to drive you to the store and drive you to restaurants and stuff, that's a good thing, because even though you're not actually close to those places when you're staying at the hostel, you know that you still have the access to those places. That's another thing to inquire about if you're going to be staying at a hostel. Anyways, let's go back to this example here. Let's say that, where'd that stupid Chinese restaurant go? There it is. Let's say I get dropped off at the China Kitchen, and now I'm gonna make my way over to the Yellow Deli because that's where I am staying. Only 0.2 miles, which means I did a good job of planning ahead there, choosing a restaurant that's close to where I'm staying. I'm gonna go over to the Yellow Deli next. I'm gonna drop off my gear. I'm gonna get my room. And then we're talking about resupply. Let's go back to resupply. I kind of got off track here. I know that the Walmart is real close, so I'm gonna probably head over to the Walmart next. You know, this part is gonna vary. Maybe you're tired, maybe you wanna like chill in your room for a while. You got a food coma from the China Kitchen or whatever it is. For me personally, I like to knock out all of my chores in town as quickly as I can so then I can just spend the rest of the day relaxing, but that's personal. But I would go do my resupply next. Obviously, this is going to require even more planning because I need to know how much food to buy. So hopefully I've looked ahead at the map, looked ahead at the guidebook, the app, whatever it is, and I know like, okay, my next section is like 3 days or 4 days or however long. And so I can buy that amount of food when I'm resupplying. Maybe I go over to Walmart here. This isn't the best Walmart, I'm not gonna lie. I resupplied there. Look, that kid seems to like it though, that's good. Maybe I can't find something at Walmart, so you know, I'm just bullshitting now, but then I head over to Price Chopper, it's got some better reviews. I can buy some cherries. Probably not gonna buy the cherries. And then after that, I head back to the Yellow Deli and I'm chilling for the rest of the day. Now the next morning, you wake up, you gotta get back to the trail somehow, right? Unless you're quitting, which don't quit. If you make it all the way to Rutland on the Appalachian Trail, don't quit. You're getting close. I need to get back to the trail. And this is a little bit more complicated than you might think, at least in this example. Now, if you're in like a small town and there's only like one way in and one way out, one road in town, it's gonna be fairly easy to hitchhike back to the trail because, you know, there's only one road. But in this example here, you know, there's roads everywhere. And if we're all the way down here at the Yellow Deli and we need to get back to the AT crossing, that's obviously like kind of a long ways. Now, the thing that you'll notice here is that most of the ride back to the trail is on the same road, which is good because when you're hitchhiking, you want a straight shot. So if I was hitchhiking back in this scenario, I would not just go stand outside the Yellow Deli and stick my thumb out because there's gonna be cars going all over the place here. There's not a good chance that you're gonna get picked up by a person who's actually going the direction that you need to go. So what I would do is I would try to find a way to get myself to this intersection right here, because once you're here, you are a straight shot all the way back to the trail. And so if you catch a car that's going this way, you know, there's a good chance they're going to be going by exactly where you need to get dropped off. Now, unfortunately, in this situation, you're going to have to find a way to get from here all the way up to here. You could try an Uber. You could just walk it too. Let's see how far the Chipotle is near that intersection. Let's see how far. So it looks like it's just over half a mile. In this circumstance, you probably are just gonna have to suck it up and walk the half mile. But like, you know, maybe you could take an Uber to get up there, or if you're gonna do that, maybe you could just take an Uber all the way back to the trailhead. I'm pretty sure Rutland will have Ubers, but a lot of trail towns won't because they're a lot smaller than Rutland. So another thing that I would look into in this circumstance specifically, and again, I only know this because I did it, but there's actually a bus that goes pretty close to the trailhead here. And you can use Google and whatever to look up that option as well. I remember the bus station here was like pretty close to the hostel. I don't remember exactly where it was. It was somewhere over here though. It wasn't a far walk at all. Let's also say, just for the sake of this example, that the Yellow Deli doesn't have laundry. I honestly can't remember if they do or not, but let's just say they don't in this circumstance. So you're like, crap, I need to do laundry. So maybe the day before, or maybe even before you get to town, if you really did your homework, like I suggest that you do, you realize this. I would probably try to, as efficiently as possible, get to one of these laundromats on my way into town, perhaps. So maybe I choose a restaurant that's over next to this one right here, so I can go eat when I get into town first thing, and then I can go do my laundry here, and then I can finally go down to the place I'm staying, which is right there. Or maybe if I have some clean clothes or my clothes aren't that dirty, maybe I go and I stay in town overnight, and then on my way back out to the trail the next day, because like I said, remember, we want to hitchhike from this intersection right here. Maybe I swing up, do my laundry, and then I walk over here, and then I head back to the trail. I know it gets a little bit complicated. Basically, the gist of things is you want to have everything close together, and you want to plan out as much stuff as you can before you actually get into town. That's the resupply strategy. Hopefully this has given you guys some stuff to think about. Hopefully this has helped. Let me know if you have any more resupply questions. Leave it in the comments. I try to reply to as many comments as I possibly can. And once again, if you're new here, subscribe. Please. 60% of you aren't subscribed. Come on, subscribe. That's it, guys. Thank you very much. Happy resupplying.